Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
Taking
having
your
me.
time.
Thank you.
And thank you, Coats, for letting me use this beautiful room.
Amen.
They do really good things here.
Yes.
So who do I have with me today?
So my name is Rita Langdale. I am a licensed clinical social worker and a registered dietitian. I'm in private practice with Hope Restored Counseling, but I also have a nonprofit, Her Voice in the Darkness, that was formed in 2021.
2021.
Yes.
And what do they do?
Her Voice in the Darkness is focused on the mental and emotional health of women. So really just addressing the issues that are affecting women and what the community could do, how can we get involved, and how can we really just get awareness out.
Fantastic.
So in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Anything that helps people in this world.
Absolutely.
So where are you originally from?
So I'm originally from Farmington, Michigan, but I've been in Florida most of my life.
Well, if I'd have known
I'm not going to date myself, but a long, long time.
Well, I'm from Cincinnati. I'm from the north side too. My mom and dad came down here when I was in the Army to get away from the snow and the cold air, and been here ever since.
Yes.
So you're originally from Michigan, but you've been down here forever. And what'd you go to school for?
So originally went to school for social work, and then segued out and became a dietitian, and then segued back in and got my MSW. And I'm actually currently working on my doctorate in social work.
Oh, wow.
So, which has a clinical focus. And my topic, my thesis is on intimate partner violence, IPV, which is a little bit about how Her Voice in the Darkness came to fruition.
Okay. And why does this touch your heart so much, if you don't mind me asking?
So Her Voice in the Darkness has twofold reasons. There are some personal. I found myself in an abusive marriage, and it took me 7 years to figure out that it was psychological abuse. There was no physical abuse. I was never hit. There were hands put on out of anger, but I've never sustained any bruises, broken ribs, broken arms, nothing.
And unfortunately, that does happen.
It happens all the time. People don't recognize that psychological abuse is abuse, that it really does take place. So that was one reason. The other one, in being in private practice, just see a lot of the women that they're basically silenced. They're not talking about it. They're not coming forward. So they're suffering in silence because of the shame that is kind of attached to being in an abusive relationship or marriage.
Wow. I guess, fortunately, unfortunately, I'm unaware, if you will. So I can only imagine the difficulties that people go through.
Absolutely.
Can you describe what your foundation does?
So we're a 501c3. We were established, like I said, in 2019. We got our nonprofit status later that year, so I believe December of 2021. So what we do is we're, again, focused on the mental and emotional health of women, and we do that, I call them 4 pillars. Awareness, we want to get the awareness out of what is the issues that are affecting women. We want to advocate for change and people, talking about it. Then education, we want to educate the public, and then resources. So what resources can we provide to the individuals? We do not see patients or clients in Her Voice in the Darkness. We refer them out.
Okay. And so just in this brief little introduction and video, is there some pointers that if someone happens to be seeing this video and they asking themselves, or you bring awareness to them, is there any things that can describe that someone can hey man, that's happening to me?
So some of the things we can look for is continuous behavior. It's that repetitive. It's not just a one-time thing, because I have people ask me all the time, well, my wife and I get into an argument, is that abusive? I always say it comes down to intent. What is the intent? And is there an intent to control? That's where a lot of that abusive behavior comes from. It's not, oh, my spouse and I got into a disagreement and we were, yelling at each other. It's that repetitive. It's happening on a continuous basis. I always kind of liken it to a frog in a frying pan. If you turn up the heat ever so slowly, that frog has no idea that they're being fried. Whereas if it was turned up quicker, they're going to jump out. So psychological abuse is that just slow tearing down of someone's soul or their psyche.
Wow. And so when they see a counselor, the counselor can find out if it's legit, if it's depression, if it's anything.
Yes. So I'm always going to encourage someone to see somebody who has experience in abusive relationships or psychological abuse. Yes, and they can sit down and talk about it. What are the signs? What are you seeing? I'm not an advocate of divorce, so I don't, even the clients that I see in my private practice, I'm not necessarily advocating that they, divorce. It's more of what can we do to address the behavior. I always tell people there's a difference between people who intentionally abuse and people who unintentionally abuse. So a lot of times individuals will grow up in environments where aggression is just the norm, or they see their parents fighting, no big deal. It's a learned behavior. But when it's brought to their attention, those individuals are like, I'm not aware of this or wasn't aware that this was abusive. Let me go do something about it. Intentional abusers are the ones who are like, nope, I'm not abusing. It's you. Had you not done such and such, I wouldn't have done such and such. So it's more of that blaming, that shifting it off of them. So some of the things we want to look for is, again, that continuous repetitive behavior, being isolated, being blackmailed, um, basically being intimidated again. And it's, let me kind of backtrail for a second. A lot of times our society sees abuse as something physical, so they're looking for the bruises, the broken ribs, the broken arms, black eye, something they can visibly see. So a lot of times individuals are afraid to come forward because they're afraid they're not going to be believed, because there's no visible evidence of it taking place, unless the abuser has gotten comfortable to where they're doing it out in public or they're doing it around people. But even then, sometimes people, they may in their gut go, something's off, but then they don't know how to encourage that person. So back to, if I see them in my private practice, I will encourage them, okay, what can we do, to kind of address the behavior and see what needs to happen. If nothing's going to change, then they might need to consider exiting the relationship.
Yeah. Is there a period? You know, I was a young guy looking to date girls, and there may be some guys or girls out there who start dating someone, or is there some early signs that, not to jump to conclusions,
Correct.
but to say, oh, this is, because I got a young daughter myself, and those little things,
absolutely,
you have to keep an eye out.
So one of the other initiatives that Her Voice in the Darkness has is to start providing skills groups to preteens, teens, and young girls. We're focusing on the girls first, but that will kind of educate them on what to look for. So things like jealousy, excessive jealousy, being isolated, essentially just if the boyfriend or the other person is controlling.
Yeah.
Those are some of the signs they want to look for. Unfortunately, a lot of our girls, they don't want to go against the grain. They want to connect. They want to be in a relationship. That fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough leads them into abusive relationships because they don't know how to get out. But then again, we need to encourage them to talk to their parents or talk to a trusted person that they can go to and say, this is what I'm seeing. Is this a problem, or what should I be looking for? A lot of times it's a gut feeling. And so we need to be running with that.
Yeah, you can see, I mean, like if someone is really super submissive, or if they're really quiet and they don't seem happy, they just seem a little on the depressed side, and they're always doing what they're told. You got to look out for those little things.
Absolutely, because those are the ones that are more susceptible and at risk for getting in abusive relationships. Now, I also want to throw in, before I forget, not only females are subject to being abused. There are men that have found themselves in abusive relationships. I think the current statistics is 1 in 4 women are in an abusive relationship and 1 in 10 men are in abusive relationships. Now, they believe that the males is underreported because our society basically says, man up, like, what's your problem? So there's that shame that's attached to where they're not going and getting help. They're not talking about what they're enduring behind closed doors. Yeah. So that number is likely greater than what we believe it is.
So I've seen people kind of fake slap each other on the shoulder. Oh, you shouldn't do that. And I think that's a sign of early stop. There's no reason to be hitting anybody for any reason, even if it's in a giggle or a happy or little thing.
Correct.
Man, if I see that, I stop that immediately. There's no.
Right. Because it can lead to aggression when we're angry. Anger is just an emotion. It's what we do with it that gets us in trouble. We're prone to get angry and frustrated, but it's that behavior that kind of comes out of it. So you're right. If they're play slapping or whatever, is that teaching the person that this is okay? And so they just kind of escalate. Because a lot of times psychological abuse will lead into physical abuse. It starts somewhere.
Oh yeah. Or if you're constantly hearing you're no good, you're not for
Mhm.
this, you're no good for nothing, you're just like your mom or your dad. And if you are a person who hears that in your own mind, it's time to go see somebody.
Yes, because we end up believing it. The more we hear it, we start telling ourselves that, and then we really start believing that we're just not worthy enough. And so it is harder to get out of those relationships once they kind of have us hooked. There's another term called love bombing. A lot of times when they're like, now people can be kind and we want, boys to be courteous and gentlemanlike, but it's that excessive love bombing. I love you, buying you expensive gifts, things like that we want to watch out for as well, because it can be a sign.
No kidding. That's the first I've ever heard of that.
Hmm. The term
Wow.
love bombing, or,
Either.
yeah.
What love bombing is just
It's that excessive, just accolades. The I love you, I love you, I love you.
that's borders on obsessive, I guess.
Yes, excessive. Now we all want to hear accolades of I love you and I love being with you, but it's when it becomes excessive. A lot of intentional abusers will sprinkle good with the bad. So, if there was an episode of abuse, they're going to turn around and sprinkle it with good. So they're going to love bomb. They're going to I love you, I love you. I didn't mean to do that. I love you. I would never hurt you. Things like
Yeah.
that.
Sounds like guilt sets in and oh
Absolutely.
my goodness, that's horrible. So, first of all, if you're watching this video and any of this is happening to you, it's not right. You're loved. You are loved.
Absolutely.
So start with,
They can contact Her Voice in the Darkness and we'll get them into resources. If it's, they need to be calling 911, if it's escalated to a higher level, they can call any of the domestic violence shelters. There are hotlines, domestic violence hotlines that they could be calling, or they can seek a therapist in their area.
yeah. And we've all had boyfriends and girlfriends that come and go. It's not like this is the one that you're going to get away. It's not healthy, period.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So,
Absolutely.
as in the community, I noticed that you do some stuff in the community.
Yeah, so we've done town hall meetings. We're going to rebrand that to where we can get out and do education in the public. It's a hard topic. A lot of times when I talk about the life skills groups, they're like, "Oh yeah, totally on board with that." But when we start talking about the initiative of getting awareness of psychological abuse out there, that's when they start backpedaling, and we recognize it's a tough topic. We're trying to get the community in the arena with us to start addressing it so that we can get these girls and boys in healthier relationships.
Yeah, because first of all, if it's underreported, you're not going to know. And second of all, if you're out in the community, bringing awareness, maybe you will draw someone to say something to help themselves.
Yes. And even though mental health still has a stigma attached to it, the younger generation are talking about it more. But we need to get them educated on what is psychological abuse. Where does abuse start? What are the risk factors? What are the behaviors you need to be looking at? And again, not everybody is abusive just because they may act aggressive once or twice. It's more of that intent. Is the intent to control their partner?
Yeah, you're mine, and you're going to do what I tell you to do.
Absolutely.
Wrong. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, in your private practice, what do you do?
So in my private practice, I see primarily behavioral health clients. And so it's disordered eating, eating disorders, anxiety, depression. I do see individuals who are in abusive relationships, pretty much the gamut of mental health.
Wow. And if someone is interested in it, they can contact you through the voice, or how would they contact you?
They can contact me either way. Her Voice in the Darkness is separate. It's the nonprofit. And then Hope Restored Counseling is my private practice. But yes, they can contact me either way.
And what's the website that you recommend?
So Her Voice in the Darkness is hervoiceinthedarkness.com, and Hope Restored Counseling is hoperestoredfl.com.
Fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's it. I appreciate your time.
Rita, thank you for your time. I hope
Thank you so much.
make a change in people's lives.
Absolutely. It's much needed.
Very, very welcome. Have a
Thank you.
fantastic day. God bless you.
Thanks. You too.